Hey, everybody. Good morning from Rye, New York. And good morning, Mark. Good morning, Crystal from where
Scottsdale, Arizona.
Arizona. Of course, Arizona. We spoke about it at some point when I mentioned that one of my favorite artists is Alice Cooper, and
Yeah,
Spielberg family that spoke at my event are also from Arizona.
that's right.
So
Went to
I,
Arcadia High School.
I should connect you, by the way, to Nancy Spielberg. She's amazing.
Thank
Um,
you for that.
and I am very excited, as you can see. Oh, and I have one light is not working. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Let me just open this one here. Yeah. I'm very excited to be here today. And let me start by reading the bio, the very impressive bio of my guest here today. Um, I will start, ladies first. I would start with Crystal, please. The business partner and life partner of Mark. Crystal Dyer Hansen is an international speaker, researcher, corporate consultant, author, and entrepreneur. Her expertise are in the field of human potential. And by the way, obviously, we'll talk about it during COVID. This is something that even becomes even more significant, what we can do in times of crisis. Through her years spent as a transformational life coach and wellness nutrition expert, she has seen people experience profound and lasting transformation in relationships, career, health, and wellness by tapping into their own inner resources. Crystal's personal coaching, speaking, CDs, and video programs, books, and articles have helped people all over the world. She is a member of the International Coaching Federation, a certified clinical hypnotherapist, the founder of Crystal Vision Life and Skinny Life, a wellness company, and author of Skinny Life, The Secret to Being Physically, Emotionally, and Spiritually Fit. She travels the world, even during COVID, I think, with her husband, best-selling author and entrepreneur Mark Victor Hansen, which we'll get into in a second, speaking, inspiring, and teaching leadership. Crystal and Mark are releasing a new co-written book. We'll talk about it as well later on. Yep, Ask. I always thought it's beautiful. You know, it looks like a Broadway, program.
That's because she had this great vision to have the best book cover ever. Ask, the bridge from your dreams to your destiny. And it just is so inclusive. It's like a mandala or something. It's wonderful. And the colors bounce and snap. You know, as the world's best-selling author, they bounce from 200 feet away, which is really cool.
It's beautiful. When I first saw it, I thought, who did the score? And then I said, oh, it's a book. It's a beautiful book.
I love that, Tony. You sophisticated guys are all the same.
No, it's beautiful. It's
Thank you.
Mark. Mark is I'm very honored. I was introduced to Mark, by the way, by Mitzi Perdue. Perdue, she's the daughter of the Sheraton family. Her late husband is Perdue Chicken. She is an amazing person. She will be speaking at our UAE conference. I will talk about it in a second. I forgot to mention her. And she, I think Mark helped her a lot with the book that she wrote, and they wrote written together. And that's how we got connected. And I was very excited to have probably the most successful author of nonfiction introduced to me. And we'll talk about that as well. You know, I always thought, I will ask you that later, like Stephen King, you know, he's so successful that at one time he took a different name to see if he'll be as successful with a different name. We should talk about that as well. Maybe that's something worth trying.
I need a pseudonym.
Yeah, so Mark is widely known as an American inspirational and motivational speaker, trainer, author, serial entrepreneur, and member of multiple boards of directors. He is best known, everybody would know what I'm talking about, as the founder and co-creator of the Chicken Soup for the Soul book series, with more than 500 million books sold. 500 million.
It's a lot.
In the area of human potential, no one is better known and more respected than Mark Victor Hansen. For more than 44 years, he has focused solely on helping people and organizations reshape their personal vision of what's possible. His powerful message of possibility, opportunity, and action have helped create startling and powerful change in thousands of organizations and millions of individuals worldwide. With his open, honest, endearing, charismatic style, Mark captured his audience's attention as well as their hearts. With his one-of-a-kind technique and masterful storytelling ability, he is one of the most dynamic and compelling speakers of our time. And we have both here. I mean, that's amazing. When I said what could top having Mark Hansen on my show, I wrote having his life partner and business partner as well. So,
oh, you sweet. Thank you, Denny. We're so happy to be here with you today.
Delighted.
thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure to have you here. And I guess we'll start our discussion with asking, with learning a little bit about your life. What brought you to where you are? I mean, how you ended up doing what you do? Where did you grow up? What was the scenery around you that made you focus, in that direction? How it all started? Maybe some background would be interesting.
Sure.
So maybe Mark or Crystal. Mark.
I grew up in a home that didn't, my parents were Danish immigrants and we didn't have any books. And then all of a sudden at 14 years old, I got an English teacher that just opened up my mind to the wonderful world of reading. So I started writing by the time I was 16. I've never stopped, 312 books later. But what happened is that I went bankrupt, as you know, in New York City. I lost $2 million in one day when the oil embargo hit 1974. I'm sleeping in front of another guy's room and asking myself, oh my God, should I kill myself? Because I thought my net worth and self-worth were the same. I now know they're totally separate. But back then I thought, oh my gosh, I've destroyed myself and my world and my future. And then all of a sudden I kept asking, because we're teaching in our book, ask yourself, ask others, and ask God, what am I supposed to do, God? Come on, tell me.
How old were you then, by the way, when this happened?
I was 26. So I'm 72 now, just so I don't have to calculate it, right? But I'm going to live to be 127 with options for renewal, because you live as long as you expect to live in heaven and writing. But the point is, I thought about that, and then I said, holy cow, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to talk to people that care about things that matter, that would make a life-changing difference. I was in Hicksville, Long Island, New York, living cheap with 3 friends, and I went down to breakfast with them, and I asked them, I said, hey guys, do you know anyone that's young, that's not a lawyer, not a doctor, not a celebrity, not a Broadway star like you were just saying, that is speaking? And they said, yeah, there's a kid a few years older than you, like him. He's up in Hauppauge. So I raced my little beat up old Volkswagen to bankruptcy court for not taken from me. This guy mesmerized the audience for 3 hours. He later became my great friend, but I went up and I asked him, I said, his name's Chip Collins. I said, hey, I want to do what you do. Would you let me buy you lunch and teach me how to do it? You be my mentor. And he said, look, kid, the chance you make it is 1 in 1,000. You ain't going to make it. So why don't you skip buying me lunch? I said, look, I'll ask the questions. You tell me how to do it. Well, I did 1,000 talks a year for the first 3 years to life insurance companies, like 50 or 20 or 10 or 6 people. In my first book, they said, do you have that story in a book? They kept asking me for it. And I said, wow, I'll write a book. So I did a book called Stand Up, Speak Out, and Win. I sold 20,000 copies from the platform. And I said, Denny, this isn't a New York Times bestseller. This isn't a national bestseller, but it's my bestseller. And I want to sign it to you, your wife, and your kids. I sold 20,000 at $10 each. I made 200,000. I thought I'd died and gone to heaven from being the lowest of the low to the highest of the high. And I just have never stopped since then and just loved every minute of it.
Amazing. And Crystal, what brought you to this space? How did you ended up doing what you do?
Right. So I grew up in a town in Idaho called Idaho Falls, Idaho, near Sun Valley. I grew up skiing. I was raised in a family with 9 siblings, same 2 parents. So I was always fascinated with the idea, even as a very young person, just really noticing that even though we shared the same 2 parents and ate out of the same refrigerator and lived by the same set of rules, how differently we all turned out as human beings, and as we went forward. So I was one of those kids who was kind of bored with high school because it was easy for me. So I accelerated my curriculum and graduated at age 16 and married my boyfriend who was 5 years older. Not a great life plan, right? So I find myself a year and a half later, or no, actually 2.5 years later, divorced with a baby on my hip in a new city, no family, no friends, and absolutely no idea how I'm going to support myself. So I did the only thing I could think of, and that was to apply for food stamps. Because, you know, I came from this family with a pioneering spirit. Once you make your decision, you live with it kind of thing. So I didn't even think about asking my parents for help. It just wasn't even, I had too much pride. So I was standing at the grocery store ready to turn my food stamps over for, you know, diapers and food. And I remember having this incredible epiphany. And suddenly this question dropped into my mind, and it was like a spotlight was shining on my head. And the first question was, how did I get here? Followed by the second question, which was, are you doing everything you can to get out of this situation, or are you taking the easy way out? And the second my mind asked that question, I knew the answer. I knew I was taking the easy way out. I knew I wasn't doing everything I could to get out of the situation. And it caused this incredible pivot inside of me that was so profound and so noticeable that as I was turning those food stamps over to the cashier, I did it. I was so much conviction in my heart. I was like, this will not be my future. And I think I was actually looking a little fierce probably to the cashier, because it's just like, whoa. But I went home and I knew that I didn't have any answers, but I had a lot of questions. That's the moment where I realized that I needed to keep asking. So I started asking, you know, what can I do? What am I qualified to do? How can I make money tomorrow? And I had heard, the answer came to me. I had heard about, you know, temporary service agencies on the radio. I called them. I called Kelly Services, Kelly Girls, and I said, how do I apply? How do I start making money tomorrow? And they said, you know, fill out the paperwork. So they would send you jobs every day. You could say yes or no to these assignments. I started taking the jobs. I was filling in at attorneys' offices because I had done that. I had worked at my dad's law office before. I had worked in the clothing business. I started very young working in clothing stores. So anyhow, I was doing sales at conventions and all of these different jobs. And I started learning so much about myself and what I really loved. And I knew that I love business. I love sales especially. And I really loved working for people, with people. And so I decided at that point to put myself through real estate school and get my real estate license. And in the meantime, someone had approached me and said, you know, you should do some modeling, consider doing it. So I approached the largest talent agency in my city. And luckily they signed me. I asked them if they'd sign me as a model and talent, and they said yes. And I ended up doing some television commercials that ended up going national. So it was really interesting, Denny, because literally slightly more than a year and a half from that time that I was turning the food stamps over to the cashier, I'm now a licensed realtor working for the largest home builder in our valley. And I became the #1 realtor in sales. And I'm getting all of these residuals, which are like royalties from my television commercials. And so I would kind of pinch myself sometimes and think, how did this happen? Like, what was that moment? What happened in that moment where I pivoted? Because it would have been so easy for me to feel sorry for myself and slide into my victimization and say, you know, I'm so young and I have no help and this is such a terrible situation, and go that direction. But what pivoted me in that moment was asking the tough question. And then even more importantly, probably trying, you know, answering it honestly. You know, was I doing the best I could, or was I taking the easy way out? I knew I was. I knew I was taking the easy way out. So being able to sort of, you know, ask yourself those tough questions and parent yourself is a really important principle of being able to move forward and transform in life. And that is why Mark and I wrote the book. I went on, I did real estate for a while, and then I was so drawn to helping people. I mean, when I was selling real estate, people would come to me and I started writing life plans for them because they would just open up to me, you know, this is going on with my husband or my sister, and I could see a clear path through that for them. So finally I decided, you know what, I need to go back. And I had already gone back to college, but I decided to change my curriculum, go to an alternative college that was the biggest holistic college in the country. And I got certified in life coaching, clinical hypnotherapy, and I opened a practice and started having so many huge breakthroughs that I started writing a book on it called Pure Thoughts for Pure Results. I was getting people into my practice that had been depressed their entire lives. And in 5 sessions, you know, get an email that's saying, I can honestly say totally free of the crushing depression I've experienced my whole life. Thank you. I'm so thankful I heard you on the radio that day. But it's interesting because in the midst of that, writing that book, my mother called me one day and sent me to this Author 101 event. And that's where I met Mark.
And that's after you wrote your book or before?
That was in the midst of writing my book.
Wow.
Because she wanted me to go. She said, you've got to get this book done. You need to get in front of publishers and publicists. And she said, I just got an email and there's an Author 101 event coming up in LA, because I was living in Scottsdale at the time. And I just recently divorced. And she said, there'll be publishers and publicists and Mark Victor Hansen will be there. And I was like, whoa, Mom, okay, well, when is it? And she said, it's the day after tomorrow. And I tried to get out of it. I'm like, oh no, it's going to be sold out, too soon. I can't get there. She's like, and she just kept pushing, call, I'll watch the kids, you just go. So for Mom's sake, I called, and instantly the promoter of the event called me back within 5 minutes, not his assistant or a secretary. It was the promoter himself. He said, Crystal, no, we'd love to have you. There's room, come over. So a day and a half later, I'm at this event and he's the keynote speaker. And we meet in the VIP room because a woman who was talking with her hands knocks a glass of red wine on my pants. And he must have been looking my way because he was surrounded by an entourage of people across the room. And all of a sudden I see him break out of his crowd and he comes rushing over and says, I'm so sorry, we're spilled on, could I help you find some club soda? And he drags me out of the room and we started having a conversation, and that's where this whole thing started.
If I may add just one thing, so you'll like the next part. So I asked her out to dinner because I said, look, it's late, but I can't stay on this property. The 1,000 people want 2 minutes of my time to help me make their book a bestseller, like I had magic dust or something. So we go off to the best restaurant in Hollywood, and there's like 50 people lined up at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night. And I thought, oh, a $100 bill won't get me in fast. So what are we going to do? We walk up to the gatekeeper, so to speak, the maitre d', and he looks at her and he sees pulchritudinous just emanating out of every pore of her being and says, okay, I give up. Who is she? Remember, I'm Mr. Ask. So I say, you don't recognize her? Denny, now his mind is going at warp speed through People magazine, Insta, Vogue. He can't figure out who she is. He says, okay, I give up. Who is she? Now, we're both of Danish descent, so I'm joking around. I say, she's the Queen of Denmark. First, he says, no, she's not. And he says, oh my God, she is. Who are you?
We're totally
I
kidding.
said, by the way, back to Ask, right? Our whole deal's Ask. Who travels with the Queen? He says, oh my God, you're the king. Hold on. And we get the best table. So if you asked, your question was, does asking work? It universally works, but it makes you think. It gives you illumination, revelation, insight, solutions. And everybody watching and listening has got some problems that they need to ask their way out of, ask themselves, ask others, and ask God, like we're teaching.
And how many years was that dinner?
So we met in 2008 and married in 2011.
Aha, nice. And how many next generation? What's going on there?
We blended our family, which before, I went through a painful divorce and she went through one, but I'd written down 267 things. I asked myself, what do I want as attributes, qualities, characteristics of my ideal wife? And we had to be, they had the same values, the same spiritual values. She had to want to travel. She had to own her own business. I don't want somebody to marry me for my pocketbook. That wasn't, I've been substantial, but I wasn't interested in being taken advantage of. And, we did all those things. I never told her until after we got married. She was 267 on 267. And we got 6 grandkids. And I said, look, our kids have got to get along, and our grandkids, we absolutely adore them. We just had one early Christmas because one of the families had to come through here yesterday. So it was amazing. And we love and adore and cherish every one of them. It's amazing how well they get along. I mean, the goal was in my writing, those 267 goals, to find a soulmate, right? 2 hearts with 1 soul. But what I actually got was, if you put 2 lit candles together, the flame jumps. It's called a twin flame. It's exponential, which all these people that are entrepreneurs know what that means. And we have an exponentially good relationship where we can finish each other's conversations. We work together. We're together 24 hours a day and are absolutely indefatigably in love.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. And any of the next generation looks like going in your route? I mean, in that direction?
Yes, it's so interesting, Denny, because Mark and his ex-wife were not able to have children. So they adopted 2 girls from birth. And so they're their children, wonderful girls. And then I have a son whom I had at a very young age, as I just told you. And then 2 daughters 9 years later. And with my next husband. So it's with Preston, Mark never had a son. And it is the most remarkable, these 2 men have the most remarkable relationship. It is as if Preston is Mark's firstborn son, and they are so close. They couldn't be closer if he were Mark's natural child. They're so much alike. His daughters aren't interested in the business he's done at all. When I first met Mark and we started dating, Preston was so fascinated by in the industry that Mark was in, and he was already listening to, positivity tapes and CDs, and like really interested in the self-help, self-growth industry, and was, Mark gave him some of his programs, and he just would eat them up and was so excited. And then my son opened up a car dealership at a very young age. And he started using those principles. He was always using a lot of amazing principles. He had figured them out himself, but to motivate his sales teams and things like that. And then it just grew to be this beautiful relationship. It's so fun for me to watch them, because my son wasn't close to his own father. There's just some issues there. He was so young and just, but it's like these 2 have a destiny father-son relationship that is just so amazing.
And he can do stuff I can't do. And she's being humble. He owned 15 different car dealerships, created Car Finder. So he did fine on his own, but I said, hey, look, Press, and he wrote the book with Mitzi and I. That's how the guy is totally competent. He's so good looking. He could be a movie star like she was. Is so smart. And he can do the stuff that I can't do. Like I really can write, and like I can open almost any door in the world. As world's best-selling author, having sold 500,000 books, but he can close it. And we're doing stuff now that my goal, as you know, Denny, and I hope it's everybody's goal that watches this, is how do you make the world work for 100% of humanity, make them physically and economically successful? And the only way to do that, as I wrote in my book, 1 Minute Millionaires, with entrepreneurship. An entrepreneur finds a problem, fixes it, scales it, and makes a vast profit. Would you agree with that definition?
Yeah, I think so. And Mark, so would you say the big breakthrough was obviously chicken soup for the soul? How did that came to be? You wrote some books obviously before that.
Yep.
And what do you think made it crazily huge as it is, that everybody knows what it is? There's no one even people that didn't read the book know the expression.
Right. Exactly.
Well, okay, so Jack Canfield and I are separately talking and had never met at a Mandala conference, which had 6,000 people. He was the opening and I was the closing. And after I'm done, he comes up to me and says, I'm Jack Canfield. I said, I know you're Dr. Canfield. You're 3rd in your class at Harvard. You're a genius. You've written 101 ways. He said, I can't believe you know all that. I said, well, I watched you work, but I also know your Vita because I study everything. I'm like both of us are really good, well-read polymaths, and which means you got varied and eclectic interests, and we do. And you write 312 books, you know a lot of stuff. Anyhow, so Jack said, I've never heard anyone tell stories like you. Let's do this. Long story short, we said, chicken soup, it'll make sick people well. Mom and grandma gave it to us. So why don't we do that as the title? We thought America soul was an ache. What we found out, the world's soul was an ache. And that's why he sold so many. But he sold so many for a couple of reasons. One is, I'm the outside guy, Jack's the inside guy. I've been selling since I was 9 years old. So I was willing to do all that, did the media. But more importantly, I'd written a little book called The Miracle of Tithing, which I say there are 4 parts to it. You got to tithe your thinking, which is the most important. Everybody wants your treasure, but they miss your thinking, your time, your talent, and then your treasure, right? And so I said, let's tithe in every book we do. And I had to drag him and our publisher along because they didn't quite get the concept. But we tithe in every book, which, if you believe spiritual language, it opens up the windows of heavens and pour you down such a rich reward, you will not be able to receive it. And that's literally what has happened. So we've tithed on every book. And then, and we're helping Mitzi now when we're tithing, as you know, to end child trafficking with Mitzi Purdue has become our extraordinary woman, best friend. I talk to her almost every day. She is just, she's got an amazing mind, life story, and she's done fun things that even as good as you are at an interview, I'll bet you didn't know she was inside the pyramids, and she sang with 10 people and could see the whole place shape shift like they did in the old days. How's that grab you?
Very interesting. And then it started to grow and sell like crazy. How was it for you? I mean, that kind of scale was never seen before. I mean, suddenly you get crazy success. How did you deal with that? How did you, and why do you think this book was exceptionally well received versus others that you wrote that other wrote? What made it so groundbreaking?
The subtitle was Heart-Touching, Soul-Penetrating Stories, and we did 7 little matrices or discernments that nobody had ever done before. Like it had to cause goosebumps, God bumps, or chilly bumps. Had to cause instantaneous transformational change. Had to have a perceptional change. In other words, the story of the 2 little kids fighting in 4th grade, and little Johnny says, it's, blah, blah, blah. And the teacher says, Johnny, you go over there. Sammy, you go over there. And she takes a ball out of her desk, puts it in the center, and says, what color is it? Black. What color is it? White. Black, white. Are you blind? Are you blind? Says switch sides, and it was half black and half white. That gives me not only goosebumps, but it says that's the world that we're in right now, is that we have different perceptions and we operate out of certain eyes. And what we did is our books got people to throw away their blindfolds, open up their heart, open up their soul. And when we did Chicken Soup for the Teenage Soul, we sold 19 million at once because we tested it on 12,000 kids at Nickelodeon. Right? We took all the names off the story, so you didn't know if Stephen King had written it, or Irma Bomback, or Mark, or Jack. And the story had to stand on its own, and the stories were so compelling to the kids. They'd call us and say, I'm going to kill myself. I don't talk to Mark or Jack. We had to pay a psychiatrist to handle that, because we're not psychiatrists, and not pretending to be on TV either. The point is that we had books that hit so well, and like I got hired to talk to 20,000 kids out of Ball State University, and 3 girls picked me up and said, we wouldn't be in school if we were you were freshmen, and we wanted to go home with our mommies, and we felt so lonely, and we felt so abandoned, and nobody cared about us. But we read your stories to each other, and they worked. And then all the psychiatrists started telling Jack and I, we can't get people with questions to open up alone, but once we tell the story and then ask the question, it works. And that's why our book has stories and questions from 26 superstars. Then we tested in all the universities, and but first of all, of course, we ground tested it in ourselves, and our relationship works 100% because we wake up every morning and we pray, meditate, and ask each other questions for 1 hour and figure out, how do you sculpt your life to magnificence? How do you sculpt your life to excellence and perfection? Because it's here for every one of us. There's abundance of great relationships, abundance of great possibilities. But if you start out and say, you don't know how bad it is. If you knew the politics I knew, then you'd know the world isn't going to work. No, bunk. It's an inside out, top down, what you impress, you express in life. You got to make your own decisions and provisions.
But the biggest criticism about the industry in general is that, you see all these motivational speakers, and they tell and they share their success, but their success doesn't mean other people would succeed as well. And the thing is, how do you generalize, and you manage obviously to do it, a formula that works for so many different people? I mean, people are so different. What might work for one wouldn't work at all for the other one. How do you manage to come up with, a series of suggestions that actually you think would apply to most?
By the way, I love your question, because what it is I did a whole sculpture of principles, and what it says is a principle is weightless, timeless, ageless, never wears out, rusts out, goes on holiday, or gets tired. And a principle like we're asking here is ask and you shall receive. But what you got to do is learn the sub levels of that principle: who to ask, how to ask, when to ask, how much to ask for. And we are dealing in what are called universal principles that are applicable to all 8 billion people concurrently alive on a planet.
Amazing. And Crystal, you mentioned how you changed, how you started to help people with their lives and learning about their difficulties. And I want to tell you, there's something about it. You can be as skeptical as you want, but there's something about being positive that does have crazy power. And I'll give you an example. When I started, after I was a student in the airline, didn't know what we were doing right after school. And I remember I had me and a friend. He wanted to be a pilot. and he wasn't accepted to the armies. In Israel, if you go to the army and you become a pilot, that's your way to the afterwards to go directly to the main to the airline, to El Al Airlines. He didn't, for some reason, didn't work out. He wanted to go to the U.S. He didn't have a visa. He didn't have anything, you know. And then he told me, and we said to ourselves, and I said, listen, I want to see myself as a businessman. I want to sit in an office over, you know, somewhere, you know, I want to be successful. And he said, okay, so what you need to do is envision yourself every day sitting in this skyscraper, looking at these great things. And what I need to do is think every day how I become a pilot. And then a year ago, I was sitting, the courtesy of the Silverstein family at the World Trade Center overlooking the Hudson. And I said, wait a minute. This is exactly what we said. And we had no clue how we're going to get there. No clue. I mean, we didn't go through all the Harvard and this and that, and you know you're going to get. And he, by the way, became a very successful pilot for airlines here in the States eventually. So I think when you're positive, you actually get the universe to work with you somehow. And that's a little bit weird, you know? How do you see that?
So true. I love that story, Jenny, because it's just such a perfect example of how life works, how our minds work, and the power we have. And what I tell people as a transformational life coach is that while it appears that life is out there somewhere and it's coming at you and you're just sort of ducking and dodging and trying to keep all the balls up in the air and deal with it, that's the illusion. The truth is your life experience, what you experience as your life, is created right here in your own mind and heart. And when you start to understand that, you realize how powerful your creative ability is, just like you just said. And for most people, when we're not getting what we want, it's because we're carrying around a whole bunch of baggage from our past, right? We think, you know, we have these experiences in life and we were hurt or we were rejected. And a lot of times those things exist at a very subtle level. We just, you know, we can't figure out why we keep self-sabotaging or it doesn't work, but we're actually running a program. It's just the wrong program. And so that's why I love the tools that like clinical hypnotherapy and taking that deep dive into your own, you know, the quiet of your own subconscious mind, because that's your subconscious mind is like a big storage tank. It doesn't discern truth. It just stores experience. And it especially stores experiences that are emotionally charged. So if you had upsets or things that hurt you or whatever happened, and those were negative experiences, those get more attention in your body and mind. Those get stored and they leave lasting memories. And so it's important to go into sort of that big quiet space of your mind and then observe it neutrally. And you know, that's what I've always been able to do with my clients. And then the goal is to bring you back to this, what I call 0 point. It's the clean slate point, the point of new beginnings, right? Where you realize you don't have to carry any of that anymore and that you actually are in charge of your life. You get to create it, just like you said, in your mind, through your imagination and through your intention and through your awareness that you have the ability to create absolutely everything you want in this life. And once you realize that, there's this just extreme sense of freedom and understanding that, you know, because you don't have to carry this stuff, you're happy again. You don't, you know, depression isn't there anymore because all of those structures that you had to hold on to hold your depression was wrapped around all of that structure that you were not aware of in your mind. When you release that and you just neutralize it and you don't even, it becomes, you know, we go through this process, I take clients through where you just become neutral. You realize that every single person you've dealt with in your life was doing the best they can from their own state of consciousness. Even if they did terrible things to you, how terrible it must have been for them inside of themselves, living in their own body and mind. And so you can, once you realize the truth of those situations, you can release it and release them to their own path, and you just take your own path. Stop carrying around everybody else's baggage. And then I love this point that you talked about where the imagination, oh, it's okay. So your imagination, you know, Mark and I say in that when we were talking about the, you know, ask yourself, ask others, and ask God, that journey that we're inviting people to take, it starts with, first of all, you know, asking yourself, where am I now? Because we don't take this time in self-reflection. The ask yourself part of the journey is that self-reflective journey. So it starts with the first critical phase, which is, where am I now? You know, Do I like the way things are working in my life? Do I feel good about my life? Is it the direction I want it to go? Because you can't move forward until you know where you are now. So where am I now is that first critical phase. The second critical phase is, where do I want to be in my life? In every area, where do I want to be? In my relationships, in my career, in my health and wellness, and even in my life purpose. Where do I want to be? I need to decide that, just like you decided you wanted to be in a big, beautiful tower overlooking the city, right? And we say, start with the way you did, with the ultimate end in mind. Why wouldn't you start with your ultimate end? Don't start with some miserable condition that you're accepting right now. It's only a miserable condition because you're accepting it. So the minute you stop accepting it and go into that beautiful imagination, God created us. You know, it says we're created in the Creator's image, like you were talking about. We really are, because through our imagination, we get to create anything, literally anything, every single thing in life that has ever been created, the greatest inventions, the greatest ideas, they all started in one place, someone's mind. And so why not use that for your own life? Start at that nth degree of your relationships, start at the nth degree of your career, start at the nth degree of your life purpose, and then sculpt it backwards. Say, in this wonderful place I am in my relationships, how are we talking to each other every day? What's important to us? How do we treat one another? What are our common goals? Da, 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 you know, all these questions. And in that way, you engineer your perfect scenario backwards. And it's like creating the most beautiful architectural plan for your life. And the final critical phase of that, so where am I now? Where do I want to be? And what specific action do I need to take there? Because life requires action. You know, we just can't, when we start to ask these questions, Mark and I talk about this in the book, we promise you, you will start to get ideas. You will start to get breakthroughs. That's how your mind works. It's so beautiful. You will start to feel so, you know, illuminations, but then you need to act on those. If someone comes to your mind, call them. If an idea around that comes, write it down and investigate it further. And in this way, you start to create the most beautiful life you've ever lived.
And I want to ask you a question that would lead us to my next question after that about COVID, but I think I'm phrasing a question now. I'm not sure. I think so. You know, with our audience are wealthy families, and it's known all around the world. Cultural, doesn't matter what culture you come from. First generation usually comes from very difficult environment,
Yep.
and he builds it, and he works very hard for that. The second generation is born into wealth, but is not that far away from the other generation to remember what does it mean to be modest, to work hard. The third generation, though, is so far away from the first. They're born into wealth. They are spoiled. They usually ruin the business on the way, and many times they are just, you know, they don't even know what to do in their life. Now, the interesting thing is that I've seen in families, and look at Mitzi Perdue, when she told me how Sheraton started in the Great Depression. The couple of guys from the army took the money from, you know, they survived the war. They had a little bit of money. They went and bought a luxury hotel. In the height of the Great Depression, people told them, are you out of your mind? Luxury hotel? When you look at Larry Silverstein, he came with nothing here. When you look at John Katsimatidis, he came with nothing here. When you look at artists like Frank Zappa or Alice Cooper, they came with nothing. And look at you. Mark grew up, he lost all of his money. He was in the pits. You, by the way, 9 children. I have 5. I thought I was impressive. You know? now I'm like, okay, I only have 5. You know, might as well get another twin. So you all... My question is, you see, the people that had to, a lot of people, many don't, but that came from the tougher areas, you know, I didn't come from a wealthy area in Israel. I came from a neighborhood in Tel Aviv that was, you know, I used to listen to hard rock. I was the only one. All the guys that were listening to all this weird music would always run after me in the street to stop listening to Kiss. But I was like, and it was very religious, and I wasn't, you know, so, people that come, how much is it, you know, when people come from bad places, it gives them fuel that they can conquer the world with some. But if you're wealthy and you're born into wealth, maybe then you get, you know, confused because you don't need to try hard. And then, you know, many of the issues we see with families are psychological, suicides, depression. You remember those kids that in LA, that crazy, right? Twins were very successful that killed their parents. Remember, crazy things are going on. But do you think, that's a long question to ask, but do you think it obviously helps those that come from bad places, but what if you're coming from a good place? You're as disoriented as the guys that came with nothing. Can you also implement what you guys talking about, as well as those that had to fight to get to where they are? I think I asked a question here.
Yes, you did. No, that was great, Danny. I totally understand what you're saying, because we see it in our own lives. The further away you get from the struggle, it seems like the more you lose the perspective and the understanding and the appreciation of what you have and what it took to get there. And we're even seeing that in our country, what it took to create this, democratic republic. And the more generations we go, I think people are more removed from that sacrifice and the preciousness of the gift. And so I think, for human beings, struggle is not a bad thing. Sometimes, because it's through struggle that we grow, we become stronger, and we appreciate things more, only because you have a perspective. When you see the dark, you appreciate the light more. When you go through pain, you appreciate being pain-free a lot more. And so when we make it too easy for our kids or our grandkids especially, and they're so far removed now from the original struggle, we're really depriving them of this opportunity to grow. Because it's interesting, when just going back to the ask journey, when you ask yourself a question, a different part of your brain lights up. We did a lot of research for the book, and it's a part of your brain that does critical thinking. It has to find solutions. So you light up and you start to come up with solutions. When you're able to solve things for yourself as a human being, that is what creates self-esteem. When you're able to overcome a personal challenge, that creates self-esteem. No one can bestow self-esteem upon another human being. And that's what is missing in these younger generations. We're not letting them struggle. We're not letting them fall enough, get hurt, and get themselves up and get out of the situation. We just rescue. And so they feel this void of inner strength and inner resources and inner purpose. And it was even for me, because we created a lot of wealth through real estate, through investments, things like that. That with my kids, I could see, like when I was young, I had to get up. My mom would grow these enormous organic gardens. She was really into health and wellness. She was way ahead of her time. She would have us do these juice cleanses. I mean, it was like all the stuff we do now, my mom was doing decades ago. And so we all had to work. We were required to work in these big gardens to help her, plant and pick, and she canned everything and froze it. And she was really dialed into health. But what it required was that I couldn't just hop on my bike and go run off with my friends. I had to do work first. And so my role was important in the functioning of our family, but that builds self-esteem, right? That is truly what builds self-esteem. In the studies done, it shows that if children feel like they play an important role in the actual functioning of the family, they are much more confident. They have stronger self-esteem. If children just think they're a pretty accessory, they don't develop that. So I used to try to think of ways, because I thought, I know what's happening here, and my kids are getting too spoiled. And so I tried to unspoil them by making it harder. So, we had a housekeeper that came full time because we had a really large house. But I would still make them do things. And it took twice as much effort to try to teach them to do their own things. And especially when we go to our lake house in the summertime, I said, this was really painful. This is a lot harder on me. No housekeeper. Okay. And I actually did have a woman come in and just do a cleanup once a week, because sometimes we'd have guests, but no housekeeper. So the kids had to learn to do their own laundry. But at a certain point, when they were like 9, 10 years old, you're going to do your own laundry. And there was so much moaning and groaning, and, and we would have them sweep the floor at night. If I cook, you have to clean up. And this idea, I mean, it's so foreign at first when you introduce these ideas to kids who are spoiled, because it's like, what? This just gets done for me. But then they grow and they start taking ownership, and then they start creating their own social structure. It was interesting for me to see, that they would start, hammering out, well, I did this job, so you have to do this job, good, work it out. You guys hammer it out. You guys, duke it out. It's good for you. It's good for you as a human being to have to figure that out for yourself. And it takes a lot of strength as a parent or grandparent to to require those kinds of things, but it's so important. Otherwise, you're going to raise a human being that feels useless, like they've never played an important role in anything material, anything that mattered.
Our grandkids now have got to work for everything. And when we had the grandkids here this weekend, the first thing I asked them was, how much have you got in your piggy bank? And every one of them knows to the dollar.
Yeah.
I got $106, Grampy, because I've earned it by working for you and for Dad. And we do very specific things. So it's, they got to earn their own.
Yeah.
Very nice. And, maybe before I go to COVID, there's a question for Crystal. How do you release your painful experiences that make long-lasting impression?
How do you release your painful experiences? Okay, so what I would do if you were, my client, we would go into I do this thing called tapping, emotional freedom technique. And I do take some clients. I don't have a lot of time, but I take clients and we can do virtual sessions. But what we do is I do this emotional freedom technique. It's a protocol of tapping on your meridian points in your body, like acupuncture points, because that, believe it or not, all of our painful memories get stored throughout your entire body. Candace Pert, she was an incredible woman. She was a PhD. She wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotion and almost won a Nobel. She was nominated for a Nobel Prize for her work, but she discovered that our thoughts generate, basically emotions that create these chemicals, and the chemicals cascade through our bodies and they dock into our cells everywhere. So, for example, the rhinovirus is similar. If you have happy, okay, so the cells that the rhinovirus can dock into in your body is also the same place where the cell receptors that accept the rhinovirus also accepts happiness molecules. So you notice people who are happy never get sick or get sick more rarely. It's because of that. So we literally create these emotions. So what I would say to get rid of these past experiences and emotions is we need to go into that space where they're kind of hiding in the subconscious mind, get into a quiet space, do a protocol of tapping, which kind of disarms your fears a little bit, get you in a comfortable place. And then we just go to that place and see what happened. And then put it in the proper perspective, where you're not emotionally in it anymore. You're just sort of hovering over it, looking at it and seeing all the players, and then being willing to release all of those people, whatever part they played, because you can either take them forward with you in your life or completely release them. And it just makes so much sense to not let any of those experiences have any control over you anymore. And then we just come back to this beautiful, like, 0 point through these sessions where we decide, what is it that you want to create? What is your perfect life? Let's create it. Let's create your state of being, because, in life, we always go in and out of different states of being. We're happy, we're sad, and some people go into depression. It's so important to recognize that these are just states. They're not you. I talk about this even in my Skinny Life book. You are not your state. You are not a fat person. You are not a depressed person. You are not an anxious person. This is a temporary state that is upon you right now, like the rain falling down, and it will stop. And you make deliberate steps. You take deliberate effort to stop it. And then you find that way to create the states that you want to live in all the time, the states of joy and productivity and meaning and significance, and start to do this more beautiful dance with life that we should all be doing. We don't have to stay in those states. You can release them, I promise you.
And COVID, crazy times. People always say, there's always an opportunity when there's something like this going on. You got to look at that. But, things are crazy. People are getting, schools are not working. It's going to damage young people's future. People are stuck at home with the kids, pressure. You see divorces probably rising up. And everybody say you need to adjust, you need to this and that, but it's easy to say, to throw it. Some people, I spoke. By the way, just before, I will just say that what you're saying is so true. One of my guests was one of the chief doctors at Mount Sinai, and they developed a special laboratory that does, people go to relax, and they found that if you relax and you go through that process, you are more immune to the virus.
Isn't that amazing?
You can check it out. If you go to YouTube, DC Finance, Mount Sinai, you can, guys, watch that one. So it's amazing. I mean, they even found out that people that smoked for many years are more immune now, which is the opposite they said in the beginning. Crazy stuff. You should check this interview out. But COVID. So what are you telling people? You know, I even spoke to wealthy families. One of the wealthiest families, I will not mention the name. You know them very well. You use their products every day. That they told me, listen, we haven't left the house in ages. People that are so that want to meet one another. Mitzi, she used to travel every second day. People are stuck at home. We've never ever witnessed something as crazy as this. What are you seeing around you? What are you telling people? What?
Okay,
so David, maybe I'll mention another thing. David Sable once was the chairman of Young and Rubicon, spoke also at one of my sessions, and he said, you know, I see all those TV commercials, you know, and he's one of the biggest gurus in marketing on earth. I see these TV commercials, and many are trying to align with everybody and saying, we are together with you. We're all in the same boat. And said, no, that's not true. We're not in the same boat. There are some wealthy people there on that boat. Many are in other boats. They're not going to reach the shore. We're not on the same boat. Don't say stuff like that. It's not true. People get that. What do we have? What can you guys say to the world during COVID? Horrible times.
You asked 3 or 4 questions all at once, so I'm going to try to unwrap it as eclectically as I can. First of all, the smartest man in America is arguably going to be Elon Musk. And when they said, you've got to shut down, you've got to be scared, you've got to fire all your people, instead he said, what's needed right now? And that's what every entrepreneur listening's got to do, is remember, find a problem and fix it. What he did is he called up 3M and said, hey, look, you guys can't make these wonderful respirators. I'll make them. I've got the 3D printing. I've got the manpower. I got the metal. I got everything you need. And when he did it, he also printed 90,000 cars. So when you have a problem, you got to go over, under, around, or through. And then that's the second point, is it's done on you according to your beliefs. So the middle 3 letters of the word believe, Denny and everyone listening, are lie. You're either lying yourself up to your highest state of being and you don't get sucked, or you lie yourself down and say, hey, wait, I'm going to listen to nonsense. Because right now, 1 in 300,000 people that get COVID die. So we're scaring people with fear. And you've got 2 choices here. Point number 3, you're either in faith or you're in fear. Now, we just got done traveling for 10 days, so we are still traveling, because the media is scaring the hell out of people, which is obscene and detrimental. They're overstating what's happening, right? And if you watch Dr. Corey, Kory, in his Senate hearing, he's got the real cure for this right now, and you can do it. And but the point, and I know you got big pharma listening here, so you got some people, but we've got friends that are locked down for 322 days. And I'm saying, hey, wait a second, this is not even normal for you. I mean, you're former military, you're a former CIA, you're this and that. What the hell are you doing? Lock yourself down. You're supposed to help us open up. We need to open up, because the cure is more painful than the cost. And there are 5 fears. There's the disease, there's the fear, there's the media, there's China, which I believe is trying to do it, because I've been to China for 22 years, up until 4 years ago, when they went crazy communistic, wanting to control the world and dominate. And then, there's, what is your self-esteem going to be, which is what Crystal and I are talking about. We're asking you to build your own self-esteem. We're asking you to do what we've discovered now, having done 110 or 111 podcasts since the book came out in April. People are saying, hey, wait a second, we didn't buy 1 book, we bought 3. Bought 1 for me, 1 for whoever I'm going to go over every question with, to transform myself out of being a scaredy cat and seeing fear as control, as false evidence appearing as real, and saying, wake up, what is my full life? Because you're only here once. This isn't a dress rehearsal. To hang out and be scared and say, I'm never going out of the house again, and I'm going to believe in stupid ass lockdown, is stupid as far as I'm concerned. And I am in judgment, because we got a bunch of media holding up mirrors, scaring the crap out of people and saying, hey, you should be less than, you should be shut down, you should be controlled by people that are subversive to your greater good. And I can go through those names if you don't know them.
how do you see China? How do you see how the governments handled COVID? What's your personal view on that?
Well, just to share honestly, I know absolutely that China does not have our best interest at heart. And I'm very suspicious about how COVID even got here. I'm very suspicious that the CDC, and I think Anthony Fauci personally holds the patent on the COVID SARS virus. Why do you hold a patent? Once you create the vaccine, then they have to use a little bit of that virus in the vaccine. So whenever you look at someone who's profiting greatly off something, you have to question it. You'd be crazy not to ask the questions, right? We'd be so almost moronic not to see that there could be a conflict of interest here. And then this is the organization that's recommending what we should do, the courses of action that we should be taking, and also asking, why are we suppressing these good medicines that are there already? See, Mark and I refuse to be in fear. We refuse. We have gone out. As long as something's open, we go. So we had a little shutdown in Arizona for about 4 or less than 4 weeks, 3 weeks, where the restaurants were closed. You could still do takeout. The second the restaurants opened up again, we were in the restaurants. We were in the gyms. We've traveled, we've gone to, we have a mountain town Flagstaff over here. So we go up there to cool off in the summer. We went there 3 or 4 times to California. We just got back from Florida for 10 days. We're not going to live in fear. And here's the interesting thing, Jenny. We ended up getting COVID, but we had the proper medications that we had stored ahead of time. We took hydroxychloroquine and we took ivermectin. If you look at Pierre Corey's testimony to the Senate,
a medical doctor,
with
2,000 doctors backing him.
2,000 who work in infectious diseases. These guys aren't in an ivory tower, telling us what vaccines they're going to create. These guys are on the ground treating patients. And they've done an incredible job at ferreting out the medications that have already worked. They've already used these types of medications in different applications around the world.
Since 1975.
I would say ask more questions and be inquisitive and look at these videos on these medications. Ivermectin has already been found. There's really good evidence that in some original studies that show that it kills the virus completely. And you take it on the first day. And then you take a course a day, skip a day, take it a day later, and then take it in the next month. Anyhow, they've been using it in Africa for a long time. It's been around since the 70s. Same with hydroxychloroquine. It's an old drug. It's a safe drug. Why wouldn't we make sure? Here's the question you need to ask. Why wouldn't we make sure everybody has those drugs?
330 million Americans, or 8 billion people around, because it costs 10 cents each, and Big Pharma doesn't make enough money on 10 cents a pill.
Right. And to Dr. Pierre Corey's question, why are we spending all the money, time, and focus on making these novel drugs that are not tested and saying, oh, we're going to give you this vaccine soon? Why? And so you have to say, well, who would want that? Who benefits from that? It's clear if you ask the right question. The drug companies are going to make a fortune, especially when they get the government to believe that this has to happen. And when they suppress the things that are already out there that could be healing people. And in Dr. Pierre Corey's explanation, he's literally breaking down and crying in front of the Senate saying, people are dying every day and they don't need to be dying. I can't do this anymore. I can't go in and watch people die. And it unfairly targets the Black community and Hispanic community for whatever reason. And you go, I wonder.
There is real racism, but not in America.
China is actually, I just read about a program they're working on where they're studying, they have access to all of our DNA now, and they're working on specific DNA bioweapons. So this is all very concerning. We all need to be asking a lot more questions. We all need to stay empowered. It needs each of our mind power. Don't cave into this fear and hiding in our houses. And there are ways you can take care of yourself. Mark and I stocked up on our hydroxychloroquine. We stocked up on the ivermectin. We took it.
Zinc.
Mark's 72 years old. You know how long he had COVID? 1 day.
I thought I was dead when I had it. All my electrolytes were going out. I was
felt
freezing
it really strong.
I had to change clothes 3 times in attendance because I was sweating and then I was freezing, sweating and freezing. And I didn't wake her up. It was 5:31 in the morning. I went to the safe, unlocked it, got the stuff out. I actually OD'd, but I called my doctor, who's a close friend for 50 years. And I said, hey, he said, just OD on water because it can't hurt you. It just, you just need to flush your system so you don't toxify yourself.
Well, that's a good way. He accidentally took more than he should have because he was like out of it. I said, why did you wake me up? So he was so delirious. He didn't think of waking me up. I don't know. And so by the time I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, he's like, I have COVID. I was like, what? So, but he'd already been taking the medication. By the end of that night, he's sitting in front of the TV. He's like, I'm starving. Are we going to eat? I was like, great. I'm so glad you're hungry. And he goes, I feel great. I feel like I'm over this thing already. And then the next day I was like, how do you feel? How do you feel? I think I'm over it. For me, I got a very mild case. I just immediately started taking the hydroxychloroquine. And I didn't even take ivermectin then. I took it later because when I learned more about it. So I kept going, I feel kind of weird. My muscles are kind of achy. One day I got a temperature of 99.9 or something. Well, then I wanted to know if I really had it. Like 12 weeks later, I had to get an MRI on my knee for an old skiing injury. I had like a meniscus tear. And I went in, I said to my doctor, go ahead and give me an antibody test, prescribe an antibody test. I want to see if I actually had COVID. We got them. And sure enough, we have the antibodies for COVID. But my case was so mild, I was still questioning whether I even got it or not. And that's because we're doing all the protocols you're supposed to do. All this information is on the website. By the way, I will share that link with you, Denny. Yes, so everybody can look at this website of these thousands of doctors who are telling us how to take care of ourselves. So if we do get it, we get a mild case. Mark's 72 years old and he was over it in a day. So go ahead.
Yeah, we have questions from folks here, but before I go there, I just wanted to ask just one more question. And I saw in some of your videos that you did an interesting research. I believe, Mark, you went and interviewed children under the age of 19 that made $1 million.
Exactly? Actually under 21, but the point is they had to make over $1 million. It's called The Richest Kids in America, and what astounds me. And then I did a whole interview of videos with him with Art Linkletter because I'd written a book with him at that time called How to Make the Rest of Your Life the Best of Your Life. But every one of the kids made at least $1 million, and they all did it in different ways. What I'm saying is there's no limit on age, whether you're young or somebody like Colonel Sanders who started at 72 and ended up creating Kentucky Fried Chicken. So everybody, as far as I'm concerned, needs today to become an entrepreneur that is self-determining and creating a business. Everyone, it's 100% of us. If you're 99, I think you should still start a business. I do. And if you're a kid, we're teaching all of our kids to be entrepreneurs and not be slaves to a job, which means you're going to be just over broke. I want them to have a real MBA, which is a millionaire's bank account.
And maybe I have two more questions before actually. Sure. Philanthropy. I've seen so much that you do in philanthropy in schools. Can you share more about that? And the concepts of chicken soup for the soul are actually implemented in what you guys are doing in schools all around the place.
So two issues. Number one, we're life members of Horatio Algier, which means we've come from rags to riches and created help kids go to college. So the kids are at-risk kids that we get to go to college, and now we got a $250 million fund. I'm not alone. There are 10 of us that win. We get it into Supreme Court, you get a gold medal. Historically, it's not been videotaped very much, but now, assuming we open up in April, we'll invite you and you'll come and you'll see Clarence, Supreme Court Judge Clarence Thomas put the gold medal over. So that's one. Amazing. The second one that everyone needs to know about that doesn't know is that we won the Spirit of Excellence Award from our dear friend Dr. Ben and Candy, his wife Carson. Now our head of HUD and the only guy who's done 15,000 pediatric surgeries and not one kid died. I mean, this is like unbelievable. And here's a black guy who was considered uneducable at third grade, started reading 2 books a week, going to the bookmobile, reading them, becomes the smartest kid and goes to Yale on a scholarship, and then out of 2 people becomes a pediatric neurosurgeon, as you know. And then the best thing is he paid for his mommy to get her, she was illiterate totally, no father. At 89, she got her PhD, just way cool. But the best thing about them is they have the Spirit of Light, the Ben Carson scholarship fund. They start fourth graders that have excellence but no money, and they get $1,000 scholarship because he said, look, we only celebrate athletes and we celebrate entertainers, and you've got big sculptures and statues in elementary school and high school about jocks, but nothing about intellect. So like I talked to 8,000 kids for him when we got the Spirit Excellence Award, we did. And what's amazing is that he wants every kid to apply for the Ben Carson Scholarship Fund. If you're a smart kid, go to that, and you're going to get to meet all the other smart kids, and they're becoming friends. And then the third thing is, I'm on the board of Back to Space, because when I was working on my doctorate with Bucky Fuller, I was down at NASA all the time, but now we're taking people back into space. There's 4 major guys, you know who they are, but the point is, we got to talk to all the kids that are the smartest, the next generation astronauts down in Texas. And what's amazing is they wanted, yes, they're STEM kids, they're science, you know that, science, technology, engineering, and math. But what they're doing is they're doing something else. They're making sure that Crystal and I are training them to be good human beings and great communicators. So they're Buzz Aldrin on steroids, so to speak, and Buzz is a good friend of ours. So does that make sense? That's what you're asking about. So
yeah, and I have a couple of questions for you, but maybe
I want them to accelerate, and I want them to know that we've got to conquer space, and that'll keep our ecology alive on the planet. I mean, you asked a big question. I tried to give a eclectic.
No, and it's amazing. I mean, I spoke to so many people. Matt Sorum, the drummer of Guns N' Roses, has a foundation that helps schools and adopts them and gives them music instruments. And we spoke about Alice Cooper is doing the same thing for kids. It's amazing stuff. I have a story about it, but we don't have time. Maybe just a couple of words. I mean, we spoke about Ask and the idea behind it, but that's your recent book. Couple of words there.
Go ahead.
Just, honestly, there's no mechanism that has the ability to reveal what is hidden like asking. So it's just such an important thing in life to take this asking journey and understand how it works and how transformational it is. And so, Mark, our goal now is to help people all become master askers, because it will reveal everything in your life that you're supposed to be doing, everything you're missing, and really put you on that path, what we call your destiny bridge. So
we want everyone to get at least 2 copies, one for themselves and one to go over with somebody. And I said the third one to give to a library, because libraries are broke now, and it breaks my heart because I love libraries, I love bookstores. But go through every question, and then we have started for free. Go to askthebookclub.com, and we're going to teach people to become what we call, it's a hard word, but master askers, because no one, if we get everybody to ask, we think they can. Our destiny is help everybody fulfill their destiny.
Exactly.
And if you're alive, you've got a destiny, and it's not meant to be in a cocoon, not meant to be sequestered. I hope I haven't been in too much of my bully pulpit in your ears.
Listen, I grew up, and the biggest movies out there are all built on what you're saying. I mean, when you're looking at Star Wars and you see Han Solo telling the droid, never tell me the odds. I don't care about the odds. Forget the odds. We're gonna make it. And everything that all the Steven Spielberg movies, everything they're built around is about you're gonna make it. Believe in yourself, and it's really. I mean, that's what I grew on. E.T. and see what's behind all these movies. Star Wars, everything you grew up on. So several questions here. One is writing. Crystal, please provide your email. Please share doctor video on how to treat COVID. So I think Crystal maybe will send me what she's comfortable with sharing, and then we'll send it to you tomorrow to everybody here. And another question, success doesn't equal confidence. How do you develop confidence if you're already successful, but still lack confidence?
It's that same journey that we're talking about. If you're not feeling confident, there's something inside that you really need to look at, and it's just taking that deeper journey. And even there are a lot of questions in the book that can help you, that give you, the pathway to, if you just want to take that approach at first. But it's really taking that deeper dive inside of yourself, because it's there.
And I think it's you can find it on Amazon, and
Amazon is a great place to buy, because unfortunately the bookstores paid their rent and didn't pay the publisher, so publishers are reluctant to send out books, which breaks my heart, because I've been to a lot of the independent 19,000 bookstores, and now they're starting to vanish, and it breaks my heart.
Can I tell you one thing that I think gives me a lot of confidence in my life? I think a lot of people live with the illusion, and we talk about this in the book, the ask God part, that God is this faraway being in some, distant universe. And really, God is right here with you. If you embrace that idea that the only way God can really work in your life is through you, in this partnership, God is in you and you are in God. And if you remind yourself of that, it is so empowering. It gives you so much confidence because it feels sometimes like we're doing this life alone. It's a very lonely place. And that's an illusion. You're not. If you just, Jesus said the words, "Behold, I stand at the door, knock." That's God always standing right there, like, just let me in. Just let me in. We're doing this together. You're not alone. And I think for me, that's huge. That's a huge part of my confidence in life. I know that beyond a shadow of a doubt, that I don't do this life alone. I do it in partnership with God.
That's beautiful, and I think it's a great way to summarize everything we spoke about. I'm looking forward to meeting you both in person at our conferences, hopefully. And I was just sharing, by the way, before we started the call, I was just sharing that we are very happy with the peace agreements with Israel and the Middle East and UAE, and being the only group in the world of family office to come out of Israel. We are very excited about doing an event there in April with the patronage of the Ministry of Economy. So we are very, very honored. And Mitzi Perdue, that introduced us, is one of the speakers there. And I was just about to convince you two to join us. It's going to be fun. So we will talk about that and hopefully meet in person, maybe in Dubai in several months. It's in April. And I wanted to thank you. Guys, you don't know how crazy their schedule is and how we don't take it for granted that you managed to find some time for us here. So thank you so much. It's been amazing. Send me whatever you think I can share with the group. I will do that. Yeah. And we will hopefully meet again in person. Any last thing you'd like to add?
We just want to help everybody fulfill their destiny to make the world work for 100% of humanity. And it is the asking of big questions that get big results. And that's why we want everyone to get a copy of the book, Ask, because we get the letters, we're getting like 120 letters a day now. And people are saying, this book has changed my life more than anything else. And they're saying, holy cow, Mark, you've got lightning in a bottle for a second time. You did it with chicken soup. And we think this is going to get you to my big goal was, what if I could sell 1 billion books? And all you got to do is look online and people say, what an idiot I am. Nobody can sell 1 billion books. But they said I couldn't do chicken soup with the soul Bible. And then we sold 70,000 a week at Walmart. So guess what? It works. Thinking big, like you said about the flight guy and you being in the tower and looking over Wall Street and the Hudson is just, that's what it takes. Somebody's got to have a dream, to have a little scheme, to have it redeemed, I guess. I'm making that up right now.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask, when you get the book, when you read the Fable of Michaela, the book starts, the prologue is a very long prologue, but it's a parable. It's called The Fable of Michaela. And when you read that, I just am challenging everybody to imagine yourself. It's really every woman, every man's story. So imagine yourself in Michaela's life. And it's a very wonderful exercise in terms of really understanding how your life can change when you take this asking journey. So, and I'd love to hear from people. I love hearing from people. So when you read it, you want to tell us, write to us about it, write to us at reception@markvictorhansen.com. Well, I'll share that with you, Jenny.
And just like you say, Mark, people told you will not make it. I spoke to Dr. Yossi Vali, one of the biggest gurus in technology today. His mother told him he's an idiot. When he got a doctorate degree, she told him, no, but the other cousins of yours, they're real doctors. They're actually treating people. You're just a doctor. And today he became, and I think Magic Johnson, I believe his parents told him all the time that his brother is way better than him and he will never accomplish anything. So that's interesting. And I will share with you just maybe quickly, I was going to Chicago. I took an Uber and the guy was like, I was driving. He looked old, but I didn't know how old. And then I asked him and he looked fulfilled. He looked so relaxed. Like he doesn't need money. He was very, whole. You saw somebody, you felt he was, and he said, oh yeah, I'm like 95. And I'm like, what? I'm driving in an Uber with a 95-year-old guy. I'm going to die soon or something? But I didn't ask questions. And then he started to tell me his life. And he said, because I felt he was so relaxed. And, you know, I wanted to know what's his story. And he started sharing. He used to be a jazz teacher. He was an Afro-American, 95-year-old guy who used to be a jazz teacher in one of the hardest schools in Chicago. He told me, Danny, every second or third week, one of my students, I don't know which grade it was, 10-year-old, 11, didn't come back because they died in a gang shoot or whatever. That bad. And he said, what fulfills my life so much is that, you know, I had people reaching out, finding out where I am. Now I'm an Uber driver. I don't care about anything. I don't teach anymore. I don't want to teach. And I have children looking with me with runny eyes, and I don't know who they are. They're like 30 years old, and they say, I remember you. You're the teacher. He said he did those courses, and that's the way he got them involved, the children. Because of you, I didn't end up shooting people. I didn't end up in jail. I fell in love with music. Even though I do something else, you brought me there. And he said, that just takes my breath away. I cannot talk for me.
It's amazing. That is an amazing story, Denny.
That's why everybody that is watching has got to watch the movie Stand and Deliver, because a guy named Jaime Escalante had all the kids dance calculus, and I get goosebumps telling you, because it's a chicken soup story, of course, but they all got into Harvard, Yale, Stanford, or you know, Columbia or something.
And I'm saying that just because, you know, forget the success and everything, I'm trying to think what gratitude you get when you meet a kid or somebody that tells you that thanks to you, their life is now way better. This is a power that, you know, you can be in Wall Street, you can be in real estate. That doesn't happen there. That happens here. Guys, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely meet in person. And thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.